with you this morning. I'm sorry that we can't do this in person. I'm sitting here in my living room at the ambassador's residence here in Brussels, and I know many of you have had an opportunity to visit. I hope that in the future we can get more of you. I'd like to start out by thanking AmCham for putting this program together. I know it's a difficult time for everybody. It's a difficult time for all of you trying to run your businesses. I feel for you. We've got a similar kind of a problem here at the embassy. We are 85% teleworking, telecommuting. Only about 15% of our folks are in the office at any point in time, which makes for a relatively complex operating environment. So I understand and feel your pain as we go through the 6 or 7 weeks of lockdown so far, knowing that while it's beginning to get better, it's not going to be great for some time to come. So I thank you for participating today. I thank you for what you're doing. And I look forward to having an opportunity at the end of this session to answer any questions that you may have. There's a chat area here. And so feel free, and I'll attempt at the end to answer any questions or ask our panelists to answer questions. They certainly are probably more adept and more knowledgeable about the business environment here in Belgium than I am. I feel really good about the conversation this morning, because what we're going to talk about is how businesses can help people. I mean, we've had a significant crisis here as well as around the world, and American companies are stepping right up. I've been struck as I have been here at the interest and participation that American companies have exhibited. Corporate social responsibility, philanthropy is essentially something that all of us, when we're back in the States, are engaged in. But I've been particularly struck by, because of the extraordinarily high taxes here, people are more want, not exclusively, but frequently more want to say, because I'm paying my taxes, let the government do it, which is quite candidly not the American way. We would much prefer to have government step out, let the private sector handle many of our problems. So that's fundamentally what we're going to talk about today. We've got 3 companies that have been very heavily engaged in finding different ways to work with and serve the general needs that have been created by this crisis that exists. And so we're going to spend just a couple minutes talking to each of them. And then, as I say at the end, we'll have an opportunity to answer some questions. They'll have some opportunity to answer some questions. And as we get started with this, I would just point out that, at least from my own experience, and I ran a multinational Fortune 300 company in the US for almost 20 years, I found that the fact that we were engaged in corporate social responsibility really was a win-win for everybody. It was certainly a win for the recipients of the philanthropy that we were involved in, but it also had a benefit for the corporation. It helped us get our name out. It helped us polish our brand and our name. But it also was something that improved morale. We found with our employees that there was something that we all, as a group, the whole company was engaged in doing something more than just serving our immediate shareholders and customers. So people felt really good about that. And I'm sure as we talk to the folks today, we'll be hearing about how they and their employees and partners feel good about what they're doing. So let's get right into it. I'd like to begin with Kearney, a multinational, very large, worldwide consulting company. They're based, the headquarters in the States, but they certainly have a major and important presence here. And they've done some interesting things. If you think about a consulting business, clearly it's basically people making visits and interacting with other folks, or in the case, I'm sure, as we'll hear in a second, from Jansen, it's people on the telephone talking to their clients and talking to folks that they interact with. So what we're going to talk about with Kearney, who has been very actively engaged in the logistics area, helping companies overcome some of the barriers that they have just from having to telecommute. They've had some very interesting kinds of things that they're doing, engaging with some of their partners. And in this particular case that we're going to talk about today, engaging with some people that make face masks, surgical masks and what have you to protect the public. So Yvan Jansen, who is the managing partner at Kearney, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you've worked with your partners?
Thank you, Ambassador. Well, you remember in the first weeks of this crisis, there was a shortage of mouth masks, in particular in the hospitals for the medical staff. So there was a hospital who reached out to Van der Velde, which is a known lingerie company in Belgium. And they knew that they had some stitches, so they asked them to help. The problem was that we're talking about a sterile, very rigid fabric, and cutting it was very complex. So this is where we came into play. They looked for a partner who could help to actually cut that fabric, had the capability to do that, so that they would be able to raise their capability, their capacity. And we found it, one of our clients at ATEX, Microterm, their facility, which is not so far away from where Van der Velde is, both in East Flanders, had that capability, had that technology. And thanks to that, it's actually, we called them, they immediately agreed to participate. And thanks to that, we could bring all these parties together. So who was there? There was the fabric coming from the hospital. There were the stitchers at the atelier of Van der Velde. There were the cutting machines at ATEX. And then there was a transport company making sure that everything was moving around. Our role was making sure that everybody was aligned, and making sure that if there was a glitch, and there were, of course, because it was new, these parties were new to collaborate, it was very rapidly resolved within the 15 minutes or so. So within a week, we raised the capacity to 10,000 masks, a type 2 mouth mask, which was tremendous and which has been very helpful at that moment for the hospital. So that was one of the things that we did, but we did many more stuff. It was always about logistics and making sure that people who had no access to the hospitals, like for instance, one of our alumni, he has a company called GDC. It's a distillery, and so he made 2,000 liters of alcoholic gel that he wanted to give to the hospitals. But he had no access. He didn't know how to connect with the hospitals. So we made sure we connected the dots, and that's actually our role. Our role, I would say in this, is working from home, because we were not on the ground, not at all. We were calling them. Internet helps. Video conferences like this helps. And our role is actually doing what we do best, and this way helping the people to together to make sure that things are happening on the ground.
Yvan, how many would you guess? How many points of contact with this process would you think you had? How many people were you able to pull together approximately?
Well, it starts always at leadership, but that was very easy. Solidarity is fantastic these days. So, just asking, because everybody participates for free. So asking people to participate from the different companies, it was more finding the right people, the right capabilities, than getting their buy-in to participate. So that's one level. Then there is the other level, the people on the ground doing it. And this was, for our side, continuously calling them and making sure that everything was fine, that everything was aligned. Because again, as said before, they were not used to work together. So it was, we had 2 people only for the stuff for the lingerie. We had 2 people who were half-time really following that up for that initiative. But then we had also other initiatives, of course.
And of course, you couldn't go and visit the process because we're all locked down in quarantine. That's a great story. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Yvan, so much for that. Let's go on now, if we can, to ExxonMobil, who's got another interesting story to tell. I am relatively familiar, and I'm sure many of you are as well. ExxonMobil's got a major facility in Antwerp. And for those of you that don't know it, Antwerp is the second largest petrochemical complex in the world after Houston, Texas. I had the privilege of being in Antwerp when a facility that's owned by ExxonMobil was put online just about a year ago, actually, a complex called a delayed coker, which makes environmentally friendly bunker fuel for the shipping industry, which is really important. But ExxonMobil's got about 2,200 employees here in Belgium, and they've got a budget of $1.3 billion supporting purchases and goods and services here in Belgium. We have with us today Anneliese Daelemans. She's the Director of Public and Government Affairs with ExxonMobil, and we're pleased to have your story. Anneliese, you've been very, very active, or ExxonMobil has been very active with a healthcare operation here in Belgium. Would you be kind enough to share with us just exactly what you all did?
Yes, and good morning, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you very much for this opportunity. So, in fact, a few weeks ago, when we really saw that it really was a pandemic and the World Health Organization announced that we had a global pandemic, we immediately saw that there was a lot of pressure on the healthcare institutions in Belgium. And as a company, we wanted to take up our responsibility in society, and we were looking into different ways to support the local communities. Firstly, of course, by keeping our facilities open to supply the communities, for instance, with transport fuels. We also had a look at our own stocks of protective equipment, and early on, we could do a donation of goggles and face masks. And thirdly, very importantly, we had a very close look at our product portfolio to see which of those products could support the health workers at the front lines. So in this context, we came into contact with Santea, which represents the hospitals and the care institutions in Brussels and Wallonia. And they really came to us, indicated that they were really facing shortages of hand sanitizers. So, and as we all know by now, hand hygiene is crucial to prevent the virus from spreading. And also, it's also essential for the safety of those healthcare workers and their patients. So, in fact, here we had a perfect match with ExxonMobil, as ExxonMobil runs the world's largest petrochemical or the world's largest isopropyl alcohol plant in Baton Rouge in the United States, which is actually one of the main components of hand sanitizer. So we did not produce locally, but we imported the volumes. And of course, that's not a final product. So therefore, we worked together. We had a very good cooperation with our local distributor, Anno. And in that way, we were able to provide, on a short notice, more than 6,500 liters of hand sanitizers to the care institutions. So many people know, in fact, ExxonMobil from our transport fuels, but we are a very large petrochemical company. And as I mentioned, we produce the raw materials for these hand sanitizers, but our products end up in a lot of highly needed medical supplies. Other examples are, for instance, face masks, the medical face masks, and the ventilators in the hospitals. So besides this product donation, we also donated 30,000 euros to Red Cross in Belgium and in the Netherlands to support the volunteers. And now that we're seeing that the curve starts flattening and we see that the pressure on the healthcare institution is slowing down, well, we're looking into other ways to support and to beat the virus. And mainly with innovation and technology. And that's really very close to our company's DNA, as we are first and foremost a technology company. And therefore, I'm very happy to say that we will announce very soon another significant financial contribution to two prominent universities in Belgium for their COVID-19 research in the race for a vaccine and potential treatment. So there is certainly more to come.
That's a really great story. That's quite inspirational. Let me just ask you, if I might, Anneliese, a little detailed question. What were some of the problems that you faced in terms of bringing the isopropyl alcohol in, getting it bottled, I'm sure you didn't have a problem directly with your distributor, but where did you find the hiccups and the bumps in the road?
Well, I wish I could tell you that it was a walk in the park to get the donation done, but it wasn't that easy indeed. So basically, the first challenge was to find, of course, the right partner. And we also were confronted with some other challenges like the legal framework, and for instance also the recipient's ability to store the isopropyl alcohol or to store the hand sanitizers. But thanks to our very good cooperation with our local distributor, Anno, we could do it in a very quick way. So Anno, we donated the isopropyl alcohol, and Anno took care of the bottling, so the blending into the final product, the packaging, and of also the distribution of it in ready-to-use 5-liter bottles.
Interesting. Now, tell me, how did you pick who got the? I mean, because it was so, there was such a need. How did you pick who was going to get the material?
Well, basically, we were in contact with a lot of organizations all over Belgium, but we picked them because they have contacted us and they really indicated their urgent need for hand sanitizers, and they were not supplied enough by others.
Great. I mean, my notes here say that you had 37 hospitals and over 200 care institutions, and that's really quite impressive.
Yep.
It's a real inspirational story. Now, if I might, and thank you so much, Anneliese, we'll come back to you and to Yvan in just a couple minutes, but let's go to EY, who's another global professional services company, and we're going to talk to Jan Clippeleer. And Jan is the Executive Director and Innovation Enabler at EY, and they've got a fascinating story to tell, and I wish I could explain it well. But I'm going to leave it to Jan to do that. What they've had a couple of occasions to have what they call hackathons. One was several weeks ago, which was entitled hackthecrisis.be, which it was very specifically involved with hacking COVID-19. And then more recently, they had a European scale. The first one was a Belgian scale, and the second one was a European scale hackathon. Jan, I'm going to ask you to explain what a hackathon is, because quite candidly, it's a little beyond my ken. I have enough trouble just putting the earplugs in to talk to you folks. So if you could share with us what you did a couple of weeks ago with the Hack the Crisis BE, as well as the EU versus virus hackathon.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Let me try. As you mentioned, EY is a global professional services and consulting company, and our tagline is building a better working world. And building a better working world these days means for us, and in these times of crisis more than ever, collaboration. Collaboration, joining forces in open innovation to find solutions for the enormous challenges we're facing. And one collaboration and open innovation event par excellence is actually a hackathon. A hackathon is typically a big event where many software developers from different organizations, corporates, startups, universities, governments, come together to rapidly develop new ideas and prototype new solutions. In this case, solutions obviously that are needed in the now and next and beyond phase of COVID-19 crisis. Pre-corona, hackathons were pretty physical gatherings in large venues, but in these corona times, it became very popular overnight to hack together virtually everybody from the home office, and that's what happened. So since the lockdown, many countries have been doing that, and in Belgium, 6 young entrepreneurs and the Antwerp startup scene were planning such a hackathon, which was called Hack the Crisis Belgium. And one of those 6 young entrepreneurs happened to be one of my team members at EY. So since EY is organizing hackathons as a service for our customers, and we have all the expertise to do that in-house, we immediately donated and volunteered to offer support with about 15 resources in Belgium. We contributed to a massive communication campaign to acquire hackers and bring them on board, a lot of organizational support, a software platform to run the event on, mentors and coaches, mentors with specific skills and expertise, coaches to project lead, and to act as a project lead to guide the teams throughout the weekend, because it's happened over the weekend, jury members and award prizes. In total, the Belgian event brought together, to our own surprise, 600 specialized hackers during 48 hours, resulting in 33 very high quality project ideas and prototypes even. The next step, obviously, 4 weeks later, just last weekend, that is, same story, but now on a much more massive scale. The European Commission decided to build on all the successful national hackathons and to bring things to the next level in a new virtual online hackathon. And this time around, just last weekend, 20,000, can you imagine? 20,000, more than 20,000 actually, hackers joined again during a 48-hour event and worked from the home office, each in the home office, on about 2,000 projects. EY immediately obviously supported this initiative by donating this time around over the weekend not less than 300 EY colleagues volunteering over the weekend and joining from 32 different countries. And we coordinated it from the Belgian office. And our focus in this last campaign was, first of all, again, communication, because participation is key. And we have seen that in our network, we estimated we reached about 4.5 million people in the days before and during the hackathon to bring them on board. And EY brought, as part of those 300 colleagues helping out, about 100 specialized, highly skilled senior mentors and coaches leading these teams, helping them forward. It was a really spectacular.
What an unbelievable group of people. Could you share with us just a couple of the projects that came out of that have some real promise?
Yeah, the dust is actually still settling. It's too much to enumerate 2,000 projects. Can you imagine?
No, I can't.
Give you
a few. Just by way of example, because
some examples. In the medical and clinical area, I saw smart development approaches combining the best of medical science with artificial intelligence, gamification approaches, and crowdsourcing even. In the detection and prevention area, we saw new approaches for protection glasses and mouth masks, but also home testing applications and platforms in order to facilitate the future COVID-19 home testing at our homes, and then to fast and in a secure way collect the data centrally to improve the situation. In the education arena, there were many smart new apps and platforms to bring together pupils and students and tutors and teachers, because all the curricula are now disturbed with the lockdown of the schools. Last but not least, in the business continuity arena, many were working very hard to get the economy going again in many sectors. And one of the most striking examples and a tangible result of a hackathon is the business segment of the entertainment industry. In that Belgian hackathon, there was a project where a new online platform and actually a new business model was developed. It's called Artists Unlimited. It was invented over the weekend, and it allows artists to perform live again and earn money, which is important for that business, obviously. And more than an idea, this platform went live in just 4 weeks with a concert last Sunday with 2,000 paying visitors in that concert. So that proves that hackathons do have very tangible results coming out, not just nice ideas.
What a great story. I mean, in fact, all three of these stories are really great stories. And they're not unique to the members of AmCham either, I should point out. That if you go to AmCham's website, you'll find lots and lots of stories very, very similar to the one that we're talking about today from Kearney or ExxonMobil or E&Y. So I think it's really quite extraordinary. I just wonder, I mean, we've got a couple minutes left. If we've got some folks that are watching or listening in, if they may have any questions for our group here. And I'm trying to see, forgive me for getting close. Here we've got, one question I have here, for the three companies, how do these projects fit into your long-term corporate social responsibility strategies? Clearly, most American companies have such a thing. How do these particular projects fit into yours? Maybe we can start with Anneliese, ladies first.
Yes, thank you. Well, basically, within ExxonMobil, we have a large history in corporate social responsibility, and caring about the communities has always been a part of that. So this, what we are doing at this moment is really caring about the communities where we operate. It's already something we did. For instance, we also donate or finance the drive against malaria. So this kind of initiatives are already part of the long-term strategy of ExxonMobil at this moment, and they will be in the future as well.
Great. Jan, how about with your strategies?
Well, indeed, this is indeed a continuation of a long tradition. EY has been involved in these type of activities before. Let me zoom in on the thing that brings us here together, the open innovation part. We have long-lasting and programs together with the Flemish government, to name one, the EY Innovation Program, where we support the startup. It's really born there. And we intend, obviously, to, after the hackathons and after these events, to continue supporting these startups with, for example, advice on how to get grants and incentives and funding for their initiatives. So this is a continuity.
Yvan, how about you? How about you folks?
It's part of, I think it's part of our DNA. I mean, we always do pro bono activities. Over the last years here in Belgium, we supported Leviria. We also supported Armentekort in Antwerp. So, I mean, these are typically social associations. So there is some pro bono work, and consultants love to do it. It's always the same. It's not about giving money. What we do is we provide our capabilities, so our time, our consultants, and we help to understand the issue, find solutions, making sure that it's connecting the dots, and making sure that something can be implemented. So that's the way that we always have helped. I mean, at local level, but also at global level. And the idea is, of course, to continue this. And this is, of course, today, we hear more people requesting our support, and we are very happy to answer on that. I mean, as much as possible. But that's part of our regular business, I would say.
Do you have any advice? Do the three of you have any advice for a corporation that may be a little bit smaller, that maybe is relatively new here to Belgium, and while they have a program at home, they haven't really gotten off the ground much here in Belgium? Do you have any advice for such a company? Why don't we start with you, Yvan?
I would say the best advice is do something as close as possible to people you know, to situations you understand, and try to, I mean, I'm not against the government, don't misunderstand it, but avoid the bureaucracy, because this is where my experience is we can help best, is actually to fill in the gaps where the government has it a bit more difficult to react rapidly.
Anneliese, how about any advice from you?
Yeah, I think basically it starts with the right partners, and then of course try to be as close to your business as you can, because then you will get the best results, I guess.
And Jan, any thoughts?
Well, as I mentioned before, we have always been operating in the open innovation arena in what we call the triple or the quadruple helix, the combination of governments, industries, startups, knowledge centers, individuals working together. I think that's the only recipe that works.
I have to say that your three companies, your companies and the three of you are really inspirational. And I'm sure that many of the folks that are watching today are going to be inspired. Let me just ask you one quick question before we close. The word hack, Jan, has in some quarters somewhat negative connotation.
Yeah.
Why do we call it a hackathon?
Not sure what the etymology is, but it's indeed a marathon of hackers in a very constructive way, working together. And you saw the masses of people that really contributed, multidisciplinary. Indeed, it's called a hackathon, and that's what it is. Very positive, as you saw the results coming out of it.
Well, and that's great. And thanks to all three of you for spending the time here this morning to talk about really important corporate social responsibility activity that each of your companies is involved in. My thanks as well to AmCham, who's made this possible and who's encouraging not just these three members, but also many others. And as I say, go back to AmCham's website to have an opportunity to see some of the other projects that are really bearing fruit. There will be, as we close, one last slide that will show some of the companies or some of the organizations that could use your help. So this is not the end. This really is the beginning, I hope, of a long tradition of American good things to the Belgian people on behalf of many of our American companies based here in Belgium. So thank you all very much. And again, thank you, AmCham, for making this possible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
Thank you.
you.